The final watch is now.
Herod ordered the murder of every male infant in a single town to kill one child he had never met. Not in a battle, not in a court of law. Soldiers walked house to house in Bethlehem and pulled boys under 2 years old out of their mother's arms. Herod had already killed his own family by then, his wife, his mother-in-law, 3 of his own sons. The most powerful man alive, Augustus Caesar in Rome, reportedly said it was safer to be Herod's pig than to be one of Herod's children. 5 days before Herod's own death, he killed his last surviving son. His body was already rotting from the inside. The historian Josephus, writing 70 years later, recorded that worms came out of his living flesh while he was still giving orders. By the end of this, the picture will be clear. Who Herod actually was, why a Roman client king of a tiny province carried that much fear in his blood, what the Bethlehem killing actually looked like in a village of 300 people, what the prophet Jeremiah wrote about it 500 years before it happened, and the part of Herod's death the Sunday school version never reaches. There is a reason this story is in the New Testament at all. The reason is older than the story. The man we call Herod the Great was the most successful king the land of Judea had had in 500 years. That sentence is not flattery. It is the problem. He was not a Jewish king by birth. His father was an Idumean, a descendant of Esau, the people the Hebrew Bible names as the cousins turned enemies of Israel. His mother was a Nabatean Arab princess. Rome made him king of Judea because Rome needed someone the Jewish public would not love and the Roman Senate would not fear. He ruled for 33 years. He rebuilt the Second Temple in Jerusalem into one of the largest religious structures in the ancient world. The Temple Mount stones, still standing in the Western Wall today, were laid by his engineers. He built the fortress of Masada. He built the desert palace of Herodium, where he chose to be buried. He built the harbor at Caesarea Maritima, an entire port city raised out of the sea using underwater Roman concrete that should not have been technologically possible at the time. He was, by every measurable standard of statecraft, brilliant. He was also, by every measurable standard of being a human being, terrified all the time. The Roman historian Josephus, writing 70 years after Herod's death, kept a list. Herod murdered his beloved wife, Mariamne, because a court rumor told him she had been unfaithful. He murdered her grandfather, the high priest. He murdered her mother. He murdered her brother by drowning him at a pool party at his own palace, watched by Mariamne, who never spoke to him the same way again. He murdered 3 of his own sons. Alexander and Aristobulus, the 2 children Mariamne had given him, were strangled in 7 BC because a court whisper accused them of plotting against him. Antipater, his oldest son and named heir, was executed 5 days before Herod himself died. The order signed from a sickbed, the body still warm when news of his father's death reached the same prison. He maintained a personal bodyguard of 2,000 soldiers who answered only to him. He built fortresses inside cities and cities inside fortresses. He stocked underground tunnels with food and weapons that he never used. The pattern across all of it was the same. The man could not stop preparing for a betrayal that he believed was always 1 room away. This is the man the Magi from the east walked up to and asked, in plain language, where the new king of the Jews had been born. The Gospel of Matthew records the moment in 7 words. He was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Both halves matter. The king was troubled, and every person in the capital city who had been alive long enough to know Herod was troubled with him, because they knew exactly what was coming. Herod did not panic in front of the Magi. He did not arrest them. He called them in privately, asked when the star had appeared, and sent them on to Bethlehem with a request they could not refuse without insulting Rome itself. "Come back and tell me where the child is, so I may also come and worship him." The Magi went. They found the child. They were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. They went home a different way. When Herod realized he had been outmaneuvered by men he had assumed were beneath him, the order went out. Bethlehem in that period was not a city. It was a village of perhaps 300 to 1,000 people, 6 miles south of Jerusalem, built on a ridge over old shepherd country. Most of the houses were one room. A few of the wealthier ones had two. There were no walls. There was no garrison. The soldiers Herod sent could have walked through the entire settlement in less than an hour. The order specified male children, 2 years old and under, in Bethlehem and the surrounding region. The age range tells you something. The Magi had told Herod when the star appeared. He doubled the window to be safe. He did not want to miss. The number of children killed has been argued for 2,000 years. Eastern Christian traditions list 14,000. Byzantine liturgy lists 144,000, drawn from the Book of Revelation, not from history. Modern historians, who do the demographic math on a village that size, estimate between 6 and 30 male infants. 6 is the number scholars working from the most conservative population estimates land on. 6. The actual horror of that number is not its smallness. The actual horror is that for the soldiers who carried it out, 6 was a morning's work, and they would not have remembered the village by sundown. For Herod, the order was administrative, a routine clearance of a security risk. For Bethlehem, 6 was every male child in the village. The Gospel of Matthew quotes a single line of scripture about what happened next, and the line is not from Matthew at all. It is from the prophet Jeremiah, written 500 years before Herod was born. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, because they are no more. Rachel was the wife of the patriarch Jacob. She is buried, according to ancient tradition, on the road that runs from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Jeremiah wrote the line about the children of Israel being marched into Babylonian exile, weeping past her tomb. Matthew read the line and saw it again, Rachel still on that road, still weeping, this time for the children of her own village. The pattern Matthew is showing is not metaphor. It is a rule about what happens at this place, on this road, at this point on the map. The mothers of Bethlehem who lost their sons in 4 BC were not the first. Jeremiah's exiles were not the first. Rachel buried her own grief there centuries before either. The road itself was a road of weeping before there was a Bethlehem to weep over. This is the part the standard retelling does not reach. Bethlehem did not happen because Herod was insane. Bethlehem happened because the place itself had a history of children being lost on it, and a king with the right level of fear was always going to find his way to it eventually. Herod did not live long after. The disease Josephus describes is so specific that modern doctors have given it a name. Some call it Herod's evil. Others diagnose it post-mortem as chronic kidney failure with Fournier's gangrene, necrosis of the genitals accompanied by intestinal worm infestation, fever, and what the ancient sources describe as a smell that no servant could stay in a room with for more than a few minutes. The pain was bad enough that Herod tried to stab himself in the chest at one point and was stopped by a cousin standing over the bed. He had himself moved to the hot springs of Caesarea to be lowered into oil. The oil killed his fever. The fever killed him 3 days later. In the last week, knowing he was dying and knowing no one in his kingdom would mourn him, he gave a final order. He had the most prominent men in the country rounded up and held in the hippodrome at Jericho. The order was, "The moment I die, kill all of them." Then he said, "There will be mourning in this country whether they want to mourn me or not." His sister Salome countermanded the order the moment he stopped breathing. The men were released. Herod's death was met with public celebration in every city in Judea. The temple gates were rung in joy. He was buried at Herodium, the palace fortress he had built for the purpose. The procession took 8 days. 500 slaves carried his body. The Roman client kingship passed to his sons, 3 of them, the ones he had not yet killed, partitioned between them by Augustus. One of those sons was Herod Antipas, the man who would later behead John the Baptist and stand in the room when Pontius Pilate questioned Jesus. The Bethlehem killing was the first violent act of a dynasty that did not stop with Herod the Great. It was the first signal that the family Rome had installed in Judea was not going to stop being itself just because the throne changed hands. Here is the part most people never hear. The Gospel of Matthew is the only New Testament book that records the slaughter at Bethlehem. No Roman historian of the period mentions it. No surviving Jewish source outside the Gospel mentions it. For 2,000 years, that absence has been used as evidence that the story did not happen. The absence is exactly what you would expect. In a kingdom run by a paranoid king who killed his own family in public, 6 dead infants in a village of 300 people would not have made the historical record. Josephus, writing for a Roman audience 70 years later, lists Herod's atrocities by category: the family executions, the war crimes, the political murders. Bethlehem would not have ranked. The fact that Matthew records it at all means the village remembered, and the memory survived for at least the 40 years between the killing and the writing of the Gospel, carried by the people who had lost their sons. The story is not in the Bible because the Bible wanted to indict Herod. Herod did not need indicting. The story is in the Bible because the village did not let the silence close over their children. If you have ever wondered why the Christmas story does not end at the manger, why the family flees to Egypt the same night, why an angel appears with a warning, why the next chapter of Matthew opens with a quotation about weeping that does not match the tone of the rest of the chapter, this is why. The infancy of the figure Christianity calls the Son of God is bracketed by an act of mass child murder. The story does not soften it. The story does not skip it. The story names it, gives the dead a verse, and moves on, because it is true, and it happened. You have been thinking for the last 15 minutes about a man who ruled 33 years, built monuments that still stand today, and ordered the deaths of children he had never met to keep a throne he could not take with him. Mary spent the rest of her life knowing what had been done in her son's name. The text says Joseph never spoke again of Bethlehem after the family left it. They lived in Egypt for an unknown number of years. They returned to Galilee, not Judea, and not by accident. The road from Egypt to Bethlehem passed Rachel's tomb. They did not take it. There is one more story in this same chapter that the standard retelling almost never reaches. It is the story of the Magi who started everything by walking into Herod's court and asking the wrong question of the wrong king. Where they came from, what they actually saw in the sky, and why their final act after finding the child was to disobey a king and disappear into history. That is a story the Gospels themselves leave open